Hello, book lovers. I'm Peg, the book prize addict, and welcome to my channel. I bet you thought I was going to talk about book prizes today, didn't you? Nope, something else. Actually, there are several book prizes that I'm very anxious to talk about that have just come out, but I'm going to make myself do something that I should have been doing all along, and that's talking about my own reading. I made this channel. I started to give some organization to my own reading, to actually finish things and sum them up and talk about them. And I find that it's so much fun talking about book prizes that that's about all I do. So, and actually several people have asked me, do you actually read any of these yourself? Not all of them, I'll have to say that. But anyway, I'm starting, I'm going to try to once a week have a little session where I talk about what I'm reading, mostly from the book prize lists. And I've discovered I don't do well reading all of one list, but I like to just pick and choose what looks good to me from all the lists that are out. And of course, a lot of them are out now. So anyway, without further ado, let's get on to what I've been reading this week. Okay, first of all is the Last Man in Europe, and it is on the Walter Scott historical novel list. It's about, I knew, and it's been announced that it is a story about George Orwell in his last year of life, practically, where he lived on an island off of England in a shoddy little shack of some sort, and finished or worked on his book 1984. So to prepare for reading this, first of all, I read up on George Orwell on Wikipedia. But I always try to do that when I'm reading a historical novel. I try to read a little bit first about either the period it was written in or the characters, if they're real life characters. And I did. It was interesting what I learned about George Orwell. Boy, did he propose to a lot of women. Wow. Not all of them accepted him either. So anyway, so I did that in advanced reading, and I decided to go ahead and read 1984 itself. Here's the older cover that I used to see around for years on paperbacks, and here's the new cover that they have. I had not read 1984. I know it's on a lot of lists. Actually, it's on my best 100 of all-time science fiction lists that I claim as one of my reading lists. Anyway, and I was amazed when I read this because I see now that it was the origin of a lot of terms that we use, such as Big Brother is watching you, and a lot of the dystopian type novels that have come since. As I said, this is written in 1947 mainly. It wasn't published till 49. But so it even told about how he chose the date that he wanted to call it, 1984. Of course, that sounded way in the future back then. Anyway, but it is a story of a government that had extreme surveillance techniques, watching people, taking people off to prison if they didn't do the right thing, etc. And it was really quite chilling, a book. And it even talked about in it how later on how he wanted to put some things that were a little bit humorous, but didn't want to take the horror away. Anyway, so I read this then before I read the Last Man in Europe, and it really helped a lot. Now, I have to say, it indicated on what I read about that this whole book was about this year spent writing, but it really wasn't. The year spent writing 1984 really only came pretty much the last half, and the first half, I was thinking, oh, I learned this much about him from Wikipedia, do I want to keep on with this? I mean, it was interesting, but just almost biographical. But everything changed when he got to the island and started writing on 1984. It was just tremendous. And because I had just read 1984, I knew what he was talking about when he got to certain parts where he was having to make a decision on and to keep that part or not. And it was just really well done. I thought during that part, and evidently the author here found some diaries and letters that he wrote while he was writing this. So a lot of it is actually true and could have happened. Now, I will mention that part of the problem is he was dying during this part. He had tuberculosis, and that was when they didn't have anything to cure it. They did send to America to get some streptomycin, I think it's called, but he turned out to be allergic to that. And so there was actually a lot of history in this too. This was a great book. I fully think this will be on the short list for the Walter Scott. Hope it does anyway. Okay, and another one I read was A Boy in Winter. This is on, oh, you can't see it very good. I don't know, some of these copies don't have all this extra writing on it, but I guess since it's getting into the awards year, it has to talk about all the kudos it got. Anyway, okay, this is about a town in Ukraine in 1944, during the last of the World War II, when the Germans were coming through Ukraine, and the Russian occupation force had been there previously, and they had finally gotten rid of them, and the Germans came. And I especially liked this because of the structure they used. It did have some grim war scenes. They rounded up the Jews in this little town and made them wait in a building, but the structure she used had three different points of view, widely different points of view. I mean, one of them was one of the Jewish men inside the building as they were rounded up and waiting to be taken off, and one was a young woman from the countryside who had come in to sell her farm wares and got caught in all this, and the other, well, anyway, just trust me, it had three good narrators and their points of view, and it really kept my interest up to keep seeing things that were happening in this little town from different points of view all during this. And I have to say, there wasn't a lot of torture, but they did kind of torture old people, and it really gave me the shudders, since I probably would have been in that group if I was there. They made them run. Old people can't run, and it was muddy, and they slipped and fell, and it was 2 different times they did this to old people, and kind of tortured them. It would be torture for me to run for sure. Okay, that's enough of that. Okay. Anyway, but I thought it was not just another wartime novel. It really, because it took place where it did, and had the different people and different stories, I think this should make the list. I don't know if it will or not, but I thought it was really well done. Actually, I had read another one by this Rachel Seffer, the author, called The Dark Room. Oh, you can't see much of that at all. It also took place in Germany during World War II, and it also used the technique of having 3 different points of view, and which really works well for her somehow. I'm interested to see if she carries on using that technique. Anyway, so this one was on the Booker long list, I believe, several years ago. Okay, let's see. Is that all I'm going to talk about? Yeah, that's all I'm going to talk about. I have a couple started, but I'm going to make myself come back next week and talk about what I've finished by then. So now we're on to the exciting part I know you all just couldn't wait to hear about. It's the update on my same-sex rainbow wedding quilt that I'm making for Sean and Kenji, and I'm having so much fun doing this. So I'm here to show you my progress. Okay, so just to review how we're doing, it's a striped rainbow quilt, or not quilt, blanket. and the symbol of gay pride and unity, etc. And I am I'm knitting it, and I'm starting with this dark purple color here. And just to remind you why it takes so long, there are 7,200 stitches in each stripe, and there's 10 different colors, 10 different stripes. So I figured if I do, what is it, one stripe every 2 weeks, I should finish by the wedding in August. But I'd like to go a little faster than that. So anyway, so here's my progress. Okay, I had showed you last time when I had just started, really. Can you see that little tiny strip there? That's the blanket I had last time I showed. And that's the different colors I'll be using. Here's the color here. Okay. The next color you can see on the pattern is going to be the really dark purple, this one. So I'll be glad when I get to the bright colors. But anyway, okay, are you ready? Here's the progress. Can you see it's down here? It's one stripe, and I guess about a fourth of another one. And I'm so pleased. I'm having a good time on it. I'll show you the real thing. Here it is. Here it is. Okay, so when I come back, they could actually wear this as a little skirt. Okay, I should come back and next week sometime I will update you on the progress I make. Incidentally, I told you I'm listening to audiobooks, and I've been listening. I should have gotten a picture, but I'm listening to an audiobook that is just out called Sunburn. It's a mystery by Laura Lippman, one of my favorite mystery writers. She writes about the Baltimore area and a small town, and is so good on atmosphere and tone, and I'm really enjoying that. So, okay, so I've done my thing. I've told you what I'm reading and what I'm doing now. After this, I'll be back this week to tell you about some great book prices that have just come out. Okay, bye.